this. All right. So I think everybody in here responded to the message in Slack, but just restating, I've updated our epics roadmap based on some work that Sam and I did to put some rough shirt size estimates on all these various epics that we've got going on. So you can take a look at the link there and see how it all plays out over the next 3 years, literally. I would expect these estimates will change. Some will get smaller, some will get bigger. But this hopefully will keep folks informed on the direction that we're going as we move on past like things like notifications and into the homepage and all that fun stuff. Any questions or comments about that before we move on? Okay, cool. So Amelia is currently running a research study with the homepage prototype that we all built. So we'll have a readout of that in a couple of weeks. I talk a little bit below about some of the early themes that we're seeing and what we'll do next steps for that. Um, Before I get in there, looking at some active projects, Austin.
Yeah, so in the 1711 issue, I think it's what described as a navigation vision quest. So I've been
Yes.
trying to put together a few concepts. I'm trying to think more deeply about them and juxtapose them against our current um, layout so that I can get some feedback from end users or participants in an unmoderated study, just on like what is sticking, what's not. Um, my hope would be that by this summer, we would have like more confidence in what we would like to do in terms of we want to invest this much time and effort or this much time and effort or nothing at all. So hopefully I can help break down that validation track a little bit and get us to a decision point quicker so that we don't feel like we're in limbo of what we want to do next year. So yeah, if you follow me around on Figma at all or anything that I post on YouTube, just let me know. I always talk about stuff. And then a side mission that IP kind of got me hooked on is just what do we do about these badge counters? Because they've always lingered in the product. They're not particularly useful, but they are useful. So it's confusing. I'm trying to think of a way that would make them definable so that we could actually describe like why do we put a badge in place? Why do we have a counter? How do we calculate that counter? How frequently it needs to update? Because in an ideal world, these numbers would just be perfect and easily discernible. But what does the badge counter next to the to-dos mean versus the badge next to merge requests? So yeah, I'm trying to think about how we could be better about describing that logic because if we look at it, you probably couldn't tell me exactly why the numbers are what they are without knowing the code underneath. And that isn't a great end user experience because they don't know the code underneath like we do.
Yeah, and sometimes even like what's the message you're sending by showing the number
Right.
depends on the size of the number. Because
Right. Yeah.
if I
Yeah.
have 0 issues in a project and then suddenly I have one, that's an information I want to see. But
Right.
if I had 100K, like 100,021 issues, and now I have
It's,
two more, I do not care. Like I already had other problems, right? Like,
right.
and
Right.
yeah, we all make them look the same, and sometimes I think this blue
Mhm.
dot when there is a diff would be, I don't know, just I agree. It's not
Yeah.
just the number.
Yeah. There's got to be some sort of in between, like some sort of blue dot potentially, or a dot indicator for when something is new. And new could be when you've last viewed that list or new since last time you logged in. I'm not even sure how we would want to calculate that. But right now, we're basically asking users to memorize the number, keep track of that number, and pay attention to when it goes up or down. But even when they then look at the numbers, they'll look at that like issue list and it'll say, 65,000. And then you open the issues list and it says 67,000 right next to it. And you're like, I can't even add those numbers up. I don't know why that. Where are the 2,000 issues? Well, we don't know. That's frustrating. So that's like hardly even helpful. And then in some ways they are because they can give you some sense of like, is this the like legitimate original source? Because you can't just copy all the issues and merge requests over if you fork a repo. So then it kind of gives you a sense of like, is this the real GitLab or is this like a forked version of GitLab? Anyway,
It's an interesting perspective. I think having some additional guidance on not just like the user counts, but the ones that we've got in the project list, like the total number of issues, the
yeah,
total number of merge requests. We
yeah.
had a nav request a few months ago. I think you were still out on paternity leave, but somebody was wanting to add a counter there next to their
Hmm.
object they were working on solely for
Right,
discovery. They're like,
right.
when the counter is there, it's more visually prominent, and thus this will bring people into my feature. It's like, that's maybe not the precedent that we want to set here.
Yeah,
So if we had some better guidance, that
yeah.
probably
We
would have made that
basic,
conversation a little bit smoother.
yeah, basically like epics, issues, and merge requests got grandfathered in, and then everybody else has been told no.
Yep, pretty much.
So there's got to be something better than that. So I'll also work with the design system team to think around that, how we can define that in pajamas too.
Yeah,
But yeah, little side quests.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it was funny. I tried to be like, okay, well, if we followed this path and we should put a counter next to every single thing. And I posted that in there as the like absurd end state. And somebody was, of course, like, oh yeah, I like that a lot more. It's like, okay, well,
Playing a dangerous game there because the performance hit
exactly.
would be madness, right? Like
Yeah,
It
you
would
could
right.
be.
even make a
Yes.
point that the design like that could be like a performance, like budget
Oh, big
win
time.
by finding a design solution that is a performance ease, right? Like
Yes.
there's
I mean,
a
the current solution isn't even a like technical ease. It already causes a bunch of performance problems. To try and keep those numbers happy, they're somewhat like close or the same. But yeah, there was even other things that we used to have. Like for a little while, Kubernetes would have like a flashing blue dot next to it. This
In
is
the
like
nav?
version like yeah, and like version like 14 maybe. And
Interesting.
it was to tell you this feature was new.
Mm. Oh, and actually, that reminds me, I saw a new badge on something that Amanda shared. It was the new work item views or saved views, something like that. It was a new
Yep.
nav entry and it had a little new badge next to it. And it's like, I don't remember seeing that before, but I guess maybe I've just
Mhm.
missed it. But no, that could be a net new concept.
That new. That new that I've seen, you know,
Okay.
not that no one's ever tried before or had in the product at some point, but yeah, the problem with those is always like, what does new mean?
Yeah.
New to them that day, new to them that milestone, new to them
Yeah.
since last year. It's so hard.
Yep. That's very tough.
Yep. Yep.
Fun stuff.
Fun
Fun
stuff.
stuff.
So anyways, those are some things. I've also been trying to play with Duo and see if I can find some fun ways to polish up the command palette as like a way to exercise what I'm learning with Duo Chat. So maybe some MRs will come out of that.
That's awesome. All right.
You want to vocalize the stuff for Amelia?
Yeah. Yeah, so Amelia's out on vacation. I'm actually not sure what she's doing this week, but she's out. Like I said, she's got some studies, or she's had three participants come through so far, and she's got another three or four scheduled next week. We're getting, at least as far as I can tell, some fairly consistent feedback. One thing that made me personally very happy is the very first call that I sat in on, um, the user bookmarked the prototype that we gave them. It's like, oh, I'm gonna keep coming back to this. So that felt like a really good sign that we're on the right path. But we do still have some things that we'll need to iterate on. We'll create a formal list of like what it is that we want to see changed in the prototype so that we can kind of revalidate these things before building them out. But some early trends that I'm seeing is that folks want more detail on screen, like issue numbers is not enough. Nobody knows what pound 6784 means. Um, I'm hearing a lot of wanting better prioritization of to-do items to surface the most relevant to-dos, not just the most recent. Um, a lot of people are asking, talking about pipelines, and to see the ones that they kind of own, the ones that are associated with their branches, and especially so that they can find ones that are failed and get to them and address them. They want the list of merge requests to include their review requests, not just the ones that they're assigned. And then everybody's wanting bookmarks, like bookmarks, bookmarks. Everybody's talking about bookmarks, and it's a pretty broad array of bookmarks, everything from like singular issues up to, saved views in a board, to external bookmarks, to like, here's how my team works as documented in Confluence. So it's kind of all over the place. It's an area that we're going to have to probably do some very targeted research on. Um, and that may or may not be in the initial MVC that we ship, depending on how complicated it ends up being.
I'm curious which of those participants like feel strongly about it being on like a specific page, like the homepage, or something that they want to be able to universally access no matter where they are. And then I'm also kind of curious, like at what point do we start touching into what Plan is trying to do for some sort of dashboard around work items, and also where code review is with also trying to build their merge request dashboard, because those both are illustrative of like how much depth there is to the nuance of
Yeah, for
those badge
sure.
counters aren't quite enough. They're just like a leading indicator that there's something for your attention.
Let me write these down because again,
Oh, yeah, thanks.
allergy brain, merge quest dashboards. And what was your first one? Sorry, again, spring
Yeah,
allergies, bad.
no, you're all good. I was throwing them out. First one was like, so that when we're talking like bookmarks, I'm curious, like, why is it more beneficial to have it on like a home page rather than like universally
Got
accessible
it, got it,
somewhere
got it.
in like the navigation structure? Like, maybe a
Okay.
counter would be, we wouldn't just want to put the search on the home page. Like, obviously, people won't access search
Oh no, absolutely.
anytime across products. I'm
Absolutely.
wondering, like, where do we start noticing, like, oh, I really like this idea. You just happen to show it to me here versus, no, I specifically want it here and not there.
Yeah, our validation at the moment is very conceptual. Like we're trying to
Yeah.
make sure that the ideas that we're surfacing are right, not necessarily that we're surfacing them in the right way.
Yep.
One of the goals that we have is to run a longer term diary study with this prototype, so that we get people using it for like at least a week. And we say, hey, please try to run your daily GitLab usage off of this experience. And then hopefully we'll see the pain points and the pressures of like, well, I have to keep coming back here over and over and over. It'd be great if I had this more contextually available, right?
Yeah.
Um, so we will hopefully have the avenue to answer that, but we're not trying to do so in this study.
Makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. I guess it was more just reflective thinking more than
Yep.
what I expect to find in this study. Cool. I like it.
Okay. And to your question on what about work items and merge request dashboards, so I have kind of two perspectives on it. The first is that we're not attempting to replace any of the other functionality in GitLab with this work, right? Our goal is to be a jumping off point, not something that becomes, you know, the central experience for everything that you need in the product, right? So just like with the to-dos, we show you 5 or 10 of them, and it's like, cool, great, go to the to-do list if you want to do more with this experience. I think we can probably do the same thing with merge requests and work items where we push out to a dedicated dashboard if that's what people need.
Yeah.
I think what we really need to figure out, though, is making sure that the goals that those dashboards have are not the same goals that we have.
Right.
Like right now, honestly, the merge request dashboard and ours are looking to be kind of the same thing. Merge request is just much more narrowly scoped. And so I think we're going to have to work
Mhm.
with all the create and plan teams to understand, what are the things that need to be surfaced in a universal, like single pane of glass, like we're building, versus something that's more deep and nuanced that really needs its own experience. We are
Yeah.
getting technical program management support for this project probably by late April. And so they'll be able to help us navigate all of the like cross-functional coordinating with all of the product and design teams for everybody that's going to have content surfaced here.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess this kind of goes back to our discussion about like the badge counters too, because I guess what I would be hoping to know from a homepage is like, okay, let's just say it's like five. Isn't that merge request like assigned tab? I guess I'd want to know like are there new things waiting for me or not? Like that could be enough to make me go, oh, okay, now I need to go like figure out what those new things are in the merge request dashboard, or there are new issues assigned to me. I didn't have to memorize. I went from 6 to 7, and maybe that's where we end up drawing lines. Like we just give you enough to funnel you to the point where you get a more rich experience to figure out what to do with all that merge request options and
Yeah.
assignments you have, um, as opposed to like telling you what they are at that level. I feel like our engineers will be like one of the best people to get some of that feedback from because that I mean, the merge request they just they push so heavily in needing to know what to do next.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Awesome. Thomas, I saw you come off of mute twice there. Did you have something to add here?
Uh, I think I twice forgot what it was. Yeah, the one thought, but with the merge request dashboard, I was just clicking around, and I'm also not sure like what exactly we're gonna show, but I guess we're gonna show like merge request, and there I think we should also aim like on the technical level to reuse as much of the visual stuff, like the view components, for example, that make a merge request, because someone like did all the work already and also showing it this differently, while maybe like there could be reasons to do that, like condense it or something. It can also be confusing, right? Like you click the thing, you come again in a list where the thing is again, but then it looks different. Like, yeah, right. The thing that triggered me was the pipeline status because I checked in the merge request dashboard, every merge request shows the latest pipeline. Like
Hmm.
redoing that would be like a completely like wasted engineering effort if there's already like the one nice list item that represents a merge request. So not
Yeah.
saying this is always possible, not claiming that, but that should be one thing to keep in mind to reuse and improve what is already in the code base instead of like creating like another representation of all the things because a lot
Yeah.
of things will make it to the homepage, I'm sure.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think we'll
And
probably have to still coordinate. Oh, go ahead.
And like the to-dos, for example, would be one exercise where we would be staying on our turf and see
Yeah.
how feasible that is. Because
Yep.
we just very recently created this view to-do dashboard. It would be a shame if we had to create another version of that that lives in a small box when it's basically all the same APIs and the same lists and stuff. Like we could make it an exercise to say, like I mean we are far from that, right? Like from implementing this in the product, but when we do, I think we should really not recreate to do item or something, but
Yeah.
say, okay, how can we make a boxed version of the full screen version and vice versa?
Hmm. No, I do agree with that. I think we'll probably need to work with everybody though to have like condensed layout versions of all of their things, right? That everyone is assuming they have the full page to display everything that they possibly need. And I don't think that's going to visually scale well to try to put all of that on one page.
Yeah. So if there would be just like one prop you set on the
Mhm.
component, say
Yeah, exactly.
small, or like even better would be if it was that responsive that it just figured that out by itself.
Yeah,
But
totally.
if it was just a thing, you say minimal, and then it looks different, but it's the same code underneath. That would be cool.
Yeah. There's been a surprising amount of discussion about needing like container queries for CSS recently. So things can be responsive to how they're presented in the product, not just the size of the browser window. I wonder if that's a thing that the design system group needs to spend some time looking at and get a perspective on. Hmm. Interesting. Um, all right. Any other thoughts about the homepage?
Since we still got a minute, I was curious.
Mhm.
I'm sorry. I was curious about the relevance of to-dos. Like, do we already know how that could be ordered? Like, is this already there somewhere, or is this for us to sort of come up with
It's
an
definitely for us to
algorithm that?
figure out. Yeah.
Okay.
take a look at this merge request that I linked. And Amelia and I are playing around with exactly that, where we've got just a heuristic where we say, like, if a to-do has this attribute, we kick it up. If it has this other attribute, we kick it down. So for example, like direct mentions to a group are lower priority than direct mentions to yourself. And if you get CC'd, that's lower priority than if you're like, just the first, you know, directly addressed or whatever. So I think we can play with a lot of those things. Um, the trick will be doing it in a way that doesn't like absolutely demolish performance, but it'll be interesting. Some of these are valid on creation time, but some of them, like the status of the associated target, are view time only. So we'll have to see how we want to play around with that stuff.
Interesting.
Hmm. Yeah, but certainly like go hop in that pull request, play around with it, see if it looks relevant for you if you run it locally, if it gives you a better surface, the to-dos that are relevant. And we'll kind of play around with trying to make a realistic, valid definition of this priority heuristic. Awesome. Um, any other updates for today? Anything interesting on the to-dos or any of the like little UX work that we're still doing on that feature? No is fine.
The directly mentioned is going away, so I'm not sure
Good,
if it's deployed already, but I think it had.
good, good, good.
And you saw the ping with not being epics.
Yeah, I pinged the engineering manager for Plan to share his perspective in that because I have no idea. He should be able
Like I
to tell.
reproduced it once on production. Maybe
Uh-huh.
maybe there are cases like where it does work. So I only tried with a single mentioning myself on a thing that
Yeah.
was an epic, but it showed as an issue, and then the filters are off. But I at the same time have like a bunch of old epic mentions in my done column, so it once worked. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, we'll get it figured out. I imagine it's something to do with how they're managing work items, but he'll know better
me too.
than we
That has
will.
something to do with the base class or parent class, and probably at some point in time they changed what an issuable versus a work item. It's very
Yep,
complicated, and it some flippery flip,
yep,
and
yep.
then it broke.
Fun stuff. Um, it's one other update in case y'all missed it. We had a community contribution that added a snooze until next week option. Um, so that issue was like created on Sunday and it was already completed and merged by like yesterday. So that was the fastest community contribution turnaround I've ever seen. Super awesome. Thank you, Paul, for the quick review on that. Cool. Well, I think that was it for what I had on the agenda today. Did y'all have anything else you wanted to hit on? Cool. Well, thank you all so much, and I hope you have a great afternoon. See you later.
Thanks. Bye.